Hi, my name is James Krause. I'm the creative director here at Scene Magazine, and we're hanging out today with Brian Peters. Brian is, let's see, get his official title here, is assistant professor at the Kent School of Architecture. I just lost that on my screen there, so sorry, Brian. I'm going to ask you to fill in. But that really doesn't begin to kind of describe who Brian is and what he does. Brian, why don't I let you kind of introduce yourself here?
Sure. Thanks, James, for inviting me to the Google Hangout. So I'm assistant professor at Kent State University, the College of Architecture and Environmental Design. This is my second year here at Kent. I'm here actually right now chatting from the RFab, so it's the Robotic Fabrication Lab, which features a 6-axis robot arm right behind me. And we're also doing a lot of 3D printing as well. So my focus, sorry, light sensors. So my focus in research and teaching is around the idea of digital fabrication in architecture, and that can revolve around 3D printing, but also laser cutting, CNC milling. And my research right now is really focused on producing 3D printing at a full scale in architecture. Previous to Kent State, I'll just talk about that real quick if I can. I was in Europe, so I lived in Barcelona for 2 years, kind of studying new fabrication techniques. And then I was living in Amsterdam for 2 years, where I worked on a project called what's called now the 3D Print Canal House. And we basically built a giant 3D printer in a shipping container that is it can print objects about 8 foot by 8 foot by 15 foot tall. And so I helped build a printer, kind of bring it from concept to reality, and now that project is basically taken off in a big way. They're trying to print a house using basically large Lego blocks that will snap together out of bioplastic, and it's going to be kind of an ongoing project over the next 3 years. So I'm trying to bring that kind of knowledge and expertise to Kent, and also in kind of my own research and experimentation.
Sure, sure. Well, I think that one of the things that when I first heard about 3D printing in architecture, I kind of thought about it in two ways. Either, is this a really big 3D printer actually printing a house, or is it printing the components? And you're actually going to be presenting at this year's Ingenuity Fest with a project that I think actually kind of goes a long way to kind of articulating how this actually works. Do you want to walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm going to be presenting a project called Solar Bytes Pavilion, and it's basically inhabitable space that is fully 3D printed. So I have a little model here that can help kind of describe what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. You see the scale person right there. And then the pavilion is printed in these kind of individual blocks that will snap together. So there's 94 unique pieces, and they all have a unique number on there, and so you know kind of how to assemble it. So here's one of the bricks here. Mm-hmm. So on the bottom, you can see the interlocking joint, and then on the outside, there it goes to a point, and right here I'm going to be inserting a solar light. So during the day, the pavilion will kind of charge in the sun, and then at night it's going to glow. So the idea for this project is related to a previous project that I worked on called Building Bytes. And the idea for Building Bytes is that we're using new technology basically to design and fabricate architecture. And so the idea of bytes, B-Y-T-E-S, refers to kind of the computer, and that these are all digitally fabricated building blocks. So traditionally we have a brick that's mass-produced, the same brick over and over 1,000 times. But with 3D printing, you're capable of basically 3D printing a different block every time. So I can show you the Building Bytes project really quick. So this is the project here, where I 3D printed ceramic bricks. So this is a ceramic brick, been fired, and this uses kind of for this project I modified a traditional 3D printer, a desktop printer that most of people have seen by now, I think, that prints in plastic, so it's fairly small. but then I attached a custom extrusion head to it so that I could print with ceramics. Basically, you can print with any liquid material, so it could be chocolate. It's kind of consistency of chocolate, or it could be concrete or ceramics. So the power of this project is that I can print this brick in ceramics, but I can also kind of make my own mixture of materials. So it could be local materials that I find on site, which is pretty exciting to think about if you were to have a mobile printing lab.
Mm-hmm.
But also it gives you a lot more freedom of design. So where once again you have a typical standard brick, it's always the same size, but with these bricks, each one can be different. When that comes into play is that, let's say, if you think about the structure of a building, typically it's designed so that each brick is the same and that it takes a uniform load. But if we were to think about the design of a wall, not all the loads are uniform, so I could have more structure in certain areas or have less structure and be more efficient about the material that I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
You can also incorporate kind of the idea of design beforehand, mechanical or electrical infrastructure, so you can design it beforehand rather than just simply drilling a hole and it's kind of an afterthought. There's a lot of other things you could do, so it's kind of the beginning of, let's say, where I see architecture going. So this is, just to back up, the whole idea of Building Bytes is that it's kind of a different take on 3D printing architecture. So the project that I was working on in Amsterdam, the 3D print canal house, we built a giant 3D printer and we can print giant components. But for this project, the Building Bytes is that we can print kind of smaller components that snap together and to make larger architecture. So that's easier to transport, easier to kind of assemble and take down. So that's the take on where I'm going with 3D printing.
Yeah, I mean, is it is it one of those things where the technology exists and so we use it, and we're sort of inventing reasons to use it, or is there a real need here? Are there trends in architecture or design that you're seeing that are crying out for this?
I definitely think it's necessary. So I think there's trends in terms of construction costs are going up. There's lots of costs with labor. There's also a trend to try to use more recycled material and also try to adjust. Sorry.
Sorry.
So there's also a trend of trying to use local materials as well. So this fits in with a lot of these things where a lot of building construction is moving to be more sustainable. Mm-hmm. So trying to use less materials, trying to use local materials, trying to be as efficient as possible. And so 3D printing fits a lot of these new trends, let's say, of saying we want to be recycled possibly. So if I'm printing with plastic, I could use a recycled material. If it's ceramics, I can use hopefully a local ceramic material. And also the potential is that you could print these buildings either on site or really close to the site, mm-hmm. Which is another kind of emerging trend or a need that people would like. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I wondered if too you could talk about some of the students that you're working with there at Kent, and is this kind of technology changing the kind of student that might be attracted to architecture and design?
Yeah, definitely. It's I would say the research that I'm working on is kind of, let's say, advanced. So we have undergrad and grad students. Mm-hmm. For the undergrad students, it's simply kind of introducing them to the technologies to show them kind of what's possible. So that's what I'm trying to do in my undergrad classes that I'm teaching, to really just get students exposed to this, and hopefully when they go to a firm, maybe their firm wants to buy a 3D printer, they can give some advice on what is possible. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of firms that are moving slowly into this new technology. They're not 3D printing buildings necessarily, but they're using 3D printers in their office to fabricate small models or prototypes. So you're seeing that a lot happening right now, used kind of in the traditional way of, let's say, rapid prototyping. And then for my graduate students, we're trying to really involve this technology into the design. So rather than just making a model, how can we actually use this as kind of a prototyping tool? So like I'm doing, we're doing one-to-one mock-ups using 3D printing. So how can we use this new technology and think about how it's going to change, the architecture is going to change in the future. At the same time, I want to challenge the students and have them think about how this technology is going to change how architecture is going to work in the future. Because let's say in the future we can have buildings that are downloadable, theoretically. Like I'm sure you're familiar with the website Thingiverse,
Yep.
where people are uploading a lot of content. Theoretically, I upload the Ingenuity Fest project to Thingiverse. I'm not going to, but I could. And if somebody had the same printer, they could print the same components located anywhere in the world. So if you think about that kind of concept, it's not that far off. And if that is the case, what is the role of the architect? Do we become more kind of like product designers, where we're designing a line of products almost, and people choose their kind of taste? Or, yeah, it's interesting to think about where we are going to lie in the future.
Sure, sure. Well, just from the from kind of the public at large perspective, the structure that you showed us, it'll be outside the Great Lakes Science Center during Ingenuity Fest, and it'll be there during the day, and it'll light up at night. Do you think that, I mean, how do you want people to react to it? Do you want them to say, hey, that's really cool, that was 3D printed, or do you want them to just say, what, yeah, that's just a cool structure, let's hang out underneath it, let's kind of walk through it? How does it affect the way that people look at a building, and how do you want them to react to it?
Well, the main point is that I'd like to show people kind of the potential of this new technology. To say, traditionally we can make the same component over and over again, but this new technology allows you to make kind of customized pieces of architecture. So, like I said, each unit will be unique, and it's really kind of highlighting the new potential of this technology. And it would be great to have people kind of enjoy the space as well. That's outside of the 3D printing aspect, but it's just kind of enjoying the potential of this using this new technology.
Yeah, well, what I think is cool about it is that it actually at night it mimics the sun rising and setting essentially through the illumination of the LEDs, and then as they extinguish throughout the night. So that's pretty cool. The structure is actually above you right now, and then
Yeah.
I want to give people kind of an opportunity to see the robotic arm behind you. I think you made reference to it before, but
Sure.
you know, these structures are, it's a little bit hard to tell from when you're holding it up, but I mean, they're pretty robust. I mean, when you hold one in your hand, it feels like, wow, this is something you could build a building with. So yeah, maybe you want to just kind of tilt your camera up and show off the art itself and the robotic arm.
Yeah, so as James said, I'm in actually my research lab sitting underneath the full-scale prototype. I'm mocking it up right now, and so you can see that interlocking joints, and then also the space for the solar lights. And then behind me, oh, break anything, is the robotic arm, which features kind of a high-powered plastic extruder, which is attached to the 6-axis robot arm. And then you see here, this is where it's being printed on this plastic bed. So that's the process. It's fairly straightforward at this moment.
Right. So this isn't the. I think Home Depot is starting to sell 3D printers. This isn't. This isn't one of those.
No. This is much. It has a much higher output of material, and it also can print much faster, basically.
Cool. Cool. I guess just it was kind of putting you on the spot a little bit, but you mentioned Barcelona and Amsterdam. You know, we think about Europe, and one of the things we think about is old world architecture, really old buildings, cathedrals. Does that inform your work at all?
Not mine personally.
No.
Other people, it might. But I think in terms of style, I would say no. But if you kind of go back to the original principles of, let's say, Baroque, where it was very complex and each person was kind of hand carving a custom unit, we're kind of this new technology allows us to go back to those times where it's another idea of craft, but digital craft. So these machines can do very complex things, or they can do really simple things. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you to kind of program it, and it doesn't cost that much. Let's say cost that much more if it were more complex versus just a standard component. So that's the power of this new technologies that we can, and that's what we're seeing as a trend right now with this new technologies, that buildings are becoming kind of more ornate once again. So we're going back to more ornate as a reaction to kind of the modernist movement, because we can do more complex structures or sorry.
You've got to start moving around more.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Actually, Brian and I are going to be continuing this conversation at Content Marketing World as one of their industry labs there, and we're actually pairing him with Jason Tilk, who we did a Google Hangout with on Friday. So it should be an interesting conversation about space and kind of new ways of looking at space, from tiny circus tents to 3D printed structures. So thanks, Brian. And I should just mention you were recognized by Architect Magazine recently for it was their R&D awards. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's great. And it was once again for this printed 3D printed bricks. So yeah, it's a great honor, and actually I've had several architects contact me to try to figure out how we can incorporate into real building. So that's the next challenge.
Very cool, very cool. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today, and we'll see you on Thursday. It's Brian Peters. I'm James Krause, creative director at Scene Magazine, and until next time, see you then. Bye bye.